Over the past 2 years, I've been getting my head stuck into personal finance books, and some of them have blown my mind. Some of the learnings sound so simple and obvious, yet only when I read it in a book did it really all come together and make sense. If you have no idea where to start when it comes to the best personal finance books, then look no further. In this video, I'm going to show you my favourite personal finance books that have really transformed my mindset on money forever. I'll leave the links in the description so you can check them out on Amazon. First up is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which is a best-selling book and the go-to for personal finance, with over 32 million copies sold all over the world. So the fundamentals of the book teach us a few important things. Now, firstly, the rich don't work for money. What this means is that the rich build a system and then they hire people to run that system for them, and they essentially become the business owner rather than the employee in the business. And secondly is pay yourself first. Now, traditionally with a 9 to 5, what happens is that your employer will pay you a gross salary, but that is subject to tax, to national insurance, to student loan repayments, and to a few other bits and bobs on the side as well. And then you get whatever's left after the taxman has got his hands on it first. But with a corporation and a company, what happens is that the revenue comes into the business and then you can write off all your expenses and then pay tax on the profits. What this means is, for example, with my YouTube channel, I could buy things like a really nice microphone, a great camera, decent lighting, write all of this off, and therefore I don't pay any taxes on the expenses. So by doing this, I'm paying myself first and buying the things that I want to buy, and then whatever is left is taxed by the taxman. And thirdly is that rich people buy assets, not liabilities. I have seen a few friends who financed brand new Mercedes or BMWs that they can only just afford, but this doesn't make them rich just because they have a nice car. What wealthy people do instead is that they invest their money into assets first. For example, in a house, which would then generate rental income. It's this rental income that would then pay for the sports car. So their asset appreciates in value, generates income, and then they buy the liability, which is the car, with that. That way, their money is not shrinking. Instead, it's increasing with the asset and the house price over time. And the way that Robert explains this is that wealth is a measure of how long you can survive without an active income. It's shocking that almost 1/3 of UK people who earn over £100,000 don't have enough money to see them through for the next few months if there was some kind of serious event in their lives. This means that these people aren't managing their money very well, and instead all they're doing is spending it on a higher mortgage, more expensive cars, possibly private school for kids as well. My mind was truly blown on this one. Rather than spending all of your money on expensive holidays, on cars, and all of these luxury items, instead spend that money first into stocks, shares, and property, and then start to use the profits from those assets on the liabilities. This way your money is always going to continually grow rather than having to earn more money to spend it on all of those luxury products. Next up is Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. Now, this book was written back in 2008 and at the time was absolutely mind-blowing. You might read it these days and some of it might sound obvious, but back in the day this was all absolutely revolutionary, and it's all about outsourcing work. And there are 3 main teachings in the book. Firstly is be effective, not efficient. If Tim's life was designed around one principle, this would be the 80-20 rule, otherwise known as the Pareto principle. What this means is that typically 20% of your outcome will usually generate 80% of your results. It's the same for this YouTube channel as well. There's a small handful of videos that generate most of the views, most of the income, and most of the engagement, even though I've put the same amount of effort into every single video. And what Tim goes on to explain is that in your own business, you need to identify what that 20% is and spend most of your time doing that, because that's what generates 80% of your outcome or your profit or your revenue, whatever that is. A great quote that he has in the book is that doing something unimportant well doesn't still make it important. And this is classic in the corporate world, where a lot of people spend a lot of time doing things that don't truly matter and actually focusing on the 80% that generates 20% of the value rather than the other way around, spending time on the 20% which generates the 80% of the value. I spin a lot of different plates with all of the business things that I have going on, including the YouTube channel as well. But when I get a little bit burnt out, what I do is I strip it right back and go back to the basics, which is A, finding the next property deal for my investment company, and then B, still trying to produce YouTube videos, because these are the 2 things that generate the results for my business as a whole. And especially for YouTube, it starts to ripple out into all of the other side businesses as well, just like the Skillshare classes that I have. So that's where I spend my time to make sure that I get the most value. Validating your business idea. Now, I just launched a property deal analyzer, but before I launched it to the public, I had to make sure that there was a good market fit and that people were actually going to use it. And everyone is really quick to build an amazing design and a brand and start creating a product, but when they go to sell it, nothing happens or the whole thing flops. And the reason is that because they usually haven't user tested it, beta tested it, or really started to validate that idea with people who aren't themselves and can look at something a little bit more objectively. You have to make sure that people will give you money for the thing that you're building or creating before you launch it. Otherwise, the positioning might be all wrong. This creates a comfort zone when you have the assurance and a good indicator from others that what you're working on is important and seen as valuable by others. How much something costs is our perception of time or value. When I was building my property deal analyzer, I noticed that a lot of people within the property world were using really old, outdated spreadsheets. And what this meant is that it was really tricky to track different projects and a pipeline of property deals, because you'd either have to save a brand new spreadsheet every time, duplicate the entire tab, or just go through one by one and then try and somehow remember all of the stats and the details. So I decided to create a product that had a timeline and a Kanban board where you could move cards across the table as you're starting to manage your pipeline of property projects. And straight away when I was testing this with people, they absolutely loved the feature. And this is how I knew, by validating my idea and starting to test it, that it was really going to work as a product in the real world for real property businesses. And lastly is charging a premium to make your life easier. And what Tim means by this is that you should be aiming your products and services at the higher end of the market, because this has so many different benefits. Imagine that you want to make £4,000 every single month, which is the average UK salary before all the taxes. Now, if you had a water bottle, if the water bottle was £10, you'd have to sell 400 of them to make £4,000 every single month. However, if this water bottle was more premium and you started selling it for £40 a month, then you only need to sell 100 bottles a month to make that same £4,000. Now, the big question is it easier to sell 400 bottles or 100 bottles? Well, the difference is that when you've convinced someone to hand over the money to you, it doesn't really matter what the price is, and this is classic sales. The moment that someone has made the decision to purchase off you, it doesn't matter whether it's $10 or $40 or £10 and £40, they're still going to really buy the product off of you. So the first reason that you should focus on premium products and services is that A, people will pay more, but B, when people pay more, it brings in the right clientele. So if you're selling a really cheap discounted product, you're going to attract the wrong people. Whereas instead, if you attract those who have money and willing to pay for premium products, then they're less likely to ask for refunds, cause any issues, and instead they will see the value in the product or service that you're trying to sell. So The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss probably isn't as life-changing as Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki for me, but still an awesome book. It really has taught me about understanding about outsourcing my business, having a virtual assistant, and eventually in the future hiring an editor for the YouTube channel and growing a virtual team. This stuff was mind-breaking and mind-blowing back in 2008. And the book has also taught me a few things about the value of products and services. Now, if you're genuinely creating value, money essentially is an exchange for value. And the more valuable you can make something, the more you can charge for a product because of the benefit you're bringing to the person who's buying it, whether that's a product or a service. And that's something that I'm really keen on focusing on within my own businesses. Last but not least is another favorite of mine, which is Rich Dad Poor Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant. Now, this is all about where you sit financially within the 4 quadrants, and you can be either an employee, self-employed, a business owner, or an investor, and each individual quadrant has benefits, has the pros, has cons, and has different characters and traits behind them, and it's all about how you start to move around the quadrant as you build your financial strength over the years. So the left side, which is less safe. Employees value safety within the system and within someone else's company with limited risk. They are happy just to get a wage or a salary in this particular section. We then look at the self-employed, who value independence and they earn their own money within their own system, but usually within their own system working for someone else's system. For example, contracting within a wider company. To quote Warren Buffett, Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls Royce to get advice from those who take the subway. Don't hand over your investment decisions to an expert. What he's saying here is take ownership of your own investments, invest it in great companies, and don't be lazy with your stocks and shares. And then the right side, which is more safe, where you have the business owner, which is someone who creates a system and then hires people to run the system for them, and that's how they make money. And then eventually you end up in the investor section, which is people who then have money either from a business or saving as an employee and self-employed. They then start to invest this money, and this is where money works hard for more money. So I'm in all 4 quadrants at the moment, and I'm working on my overall cash flow quadrant. I am an employee and I have an active income which makes up about 60% of my income every single month. I'm then also self-employed because I have lodgers and rental income coming through that stream. I then also have the businesses as well, of which YouTube income goes into one business, property is going into another, which links nicely onto the right side of the quadrant. As I grow the business side of things, I'm also now starting to grow the investment side as well. I've had stocks and shares for many years, but now I'm starting to move that into physical property, investing and development as we go into the future. So what I want to do is start moving away from the left side of the quadrant with employed and self-employed, and start to move into the business and investor side of the quadrant to build the right, more safer side. To really understand where you sit financially, all you have to do is look at the cash flow quadrant, look where you are today, what boxes are you ticking, and look at where you want to be in the future. And then that can start to help you understand what you need to do to move from employee or self-employed into business/investor, and that's how you start to grow wealth into the future. I've left the links to all of the books in the description below to Amazon. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out other ones like this one here, which is how I'm starting to implement 8 passive streams of income that generated over $12,000 in 1 month just from ideas in these books. So feel free to give this a watch, and I will see you in the next video.